Welcome to Life by a Thousand Cuts, a podcast series about skin cancer surgery. I'm your host, Associate Professor Tony Dicker, and in each episode, we'll share practical insights to support your skin cancer surgical practice, from clinical tips and case studies to journal reviews and interviews with skin cancer colleagues. Today, we are looking at sunscreen and the recent media discussions about whether or not they work. So let's get into it. Over the last few months, I've had quite a few patients asking me about sunscreen and whether they are safe. This seems to happen every 2 or 3 years and is usually because some social media trend has taken off or a celebrity chef has decided to make a controversial claim. If the general media picks it up, then it seems to gain legs, and then everyone assumes that all the claims are true because they've heard it on the ABC or Channel 7 News. It turns out that the recent inquiries have started in a similar way. Choice magazine came out with an article on the 12th of June stating that 16 out of 20 sunscreens failed, and then the PR machine has rolled on since then. So my gut reaction is usually anti-marketing, whether it be for or against a product, as most things in life are really grey rather than black or white, and it's very hard to convey shades of grey in a 10-word bold headline. At the same time, I like to try and see source information as far as practical, so off I go reading. As background, a sunscreen's a regulated product. In Australia, you can't go and make claims about a sunscreen without evidence of the claim. And these claims are managed by the TGA, the Therapeutic Goods Administration. It's a federal body that falls under the Australian Government's Department of Health, Disability and Ageing. So a false claim therefore has significant consequences if it breaches Australian law. The main part of the regulation is the SPF claim, or the sun protection factor. This measures how much the cream can block the sun, or how much longer it takes for the skin to go red after a certain dose of UV. An SPF of 2 means that it takes twice as long to go red compared to no protection, or it's 50% protective. If your skin would normally go red in 5 minutes, then an SPF of 2 would mean it would take 10 minutes to go red. If we extrapolate that to an SPF of 30, then it would take 30 times 5 minutes to go red, or 2.5 hours. If it's SPF 50, then it's over 4 hours. So these times are effectively as long as the creams will stay on the skin anyway. It's a guide, of course, as the intensity of the UV varies during the day. People's skin can have varying tolerability to UV exposure, and doses of UV less than required to go red will still have some damaging effects on the skin. So it's not just this measure of SPF that's important. But let's go back to the start. On the 12th of June, Choice magazine published their results from testing 20 different sunscreens for its SPF. The tests were done by laboratories independent of them. The questions they asked were: which products met their SPF claims, how much these cost per dose, what each product costs per dose of application, and how many uses can you get out of one bottle. Now, these are actually reasonable things to test. They can be measured, they're relevant, and they're not subjective questions like which one feels nice or who has the prettiest logo. The article also starts with similar details to what I've just talked about above. It explains how SPF testing is done and gives examples of what SPF means. And in my opinion, it does this quite well and breaks down what's quite complex and mathematical information into something that the general public could understand. To my mind, it passes the high school student test. If the average high school student reads this, or maybe watches an influencer discuss it on TikTok, then they would finish by saying, I get it. That's a good outcome. The information is for general public, not some esoteric panel of sunscreen experts. So a big shout out there for how this was presented. Then I got to the icky part where the world became black or white. As I mentioned, the world is mainly grey. So this is where it gets hard to convey the information with balance. An SPF of 36 would give you 3 hours before going red, compared to 5 minutes with no protection. This is still way better than not using a sunscreen. It definitely achieves something. An SPF of 36, when the label says SPF of 50, is in breach of government regulations. So it's definitely failed in terms of regulatory criteria, even though it's still effective and having a significant decrease in the amount of UV getting to the skin. But that's regarded as a fail. So here's the difficult part. The 10-word headline for the article. We tested the SPF claims of 20 sunscreens, 16 failed. Now, the headline is quite accurate in terms of 16 of them failed the measure of what was marketed as for their SPF 50. But the interpretation by the public is, the problems really occur. A lot of people will read a headline like that or hear about it from a secondary source, and they come along to me and say, so sunscreens don't work. We're losing that public trust. Now, I could put on my super cynical hat here and say, well, this is good for business. If people stop using sunscreens, then they'll grow more skin cancers and I'll get to cut them off and make more money. But that, of course, is completely the opposite to why I do my job. I really don't want that to happen. I've got enough work on already anyway. We do this job because we want people to not get skin cancers, and we're there to help them and educate them. But reality now is I'm spending extra time correcting these misconceptions for people. Most of my patients haven't actually read the whole article, but have heard about the headline from a secondary source of mainstream media. And that secondary source media has really made a headline out of the headline, making it an even darker shade of black. The grey was completely left out of it. I want them to go and read the good stuff about the SPF, what it is, how it's measured, and even the stuff about how much sunscreen you need to apply for it to work. This was great information presented by the Choice magazine article, but instead the overall effect has been that the general public are less trusting of a product that might actually save their lives. I don't think that's a good result at the end. There's always steak knives, of course. Yes, there is more. The testing process of SPF is actually a bit variable. One of the products tested was listed as SPF 50, but the Choice testers, or the people who Choice engaged to test, came up with an answer of 4. Wow, that's a big difference, and one that I find really confusing. As you can imagine, the company that makes the product would have been quite confused as well. They have certified data from an independent source outside of their company that they met the SPF 50 criteria. Then they publicly get called out about their results. What would you do if you were in charge of that company? Now, if you're running Dodgy Brothers Incorporated, then it's often the private jet to the Bahamas perhaps, but these guys did the right thing. Number one, they're taking this product off the market until we can make sense of this. Number two, you can have a refund if you bought the product. But number three, and probably the better thing they've done, is let's try and find out the real answer. They went and got 8 different labs to test their products. They got 8 different results. So 3 of the results they received back came back with 60 or above, easily passing their criteria for TGA listing. Other results were 4, 10, 21, 26, and 33. So 3 out of 8 results they got were easily meeting the SPF 50 claim. 3 of them were in the 20s to 30s, so they were about half of the claim, and 2 of them were really poor results overall. So rather than sorting out the problem, it's just created more head scratching. No one knows the real answer yet, but the presumption is it's something to do with the way the product is compounded or manufactured, which is causing this unexplained instability in these variable results. Now, the other part of this story is that the brand they chose to test is the brand part of the company. that company outsources the manufacturing of the product to another company. Other brands are also using that same manufacturer. So many other companies out there with particular brand names have also withdrawn their product because they're made by the same manufacturing company. And they've taken these products off the shelves until this unexplained discrepancy in results is sorted out. There's more to come in this space, but it sounds like things are at least moving in the right direction. Now, Choice magazine also asked the TGA to investigate these discrepancies, and that's exactly what the TGA has been doing. Choice also suggested the TGA should do their own testing. That's not how the TGA works. They're a regulatory body which assesses third-party information with significant penalties if you lie to them. To my mind, this is what a governing body should do, govern and regulate rather than taking over roles of industry. What does it mean for us? Well, first of all, a big congratulations to Choice for prodding and probing with sensible questions that are relevant to the general public. It's a pity that the other really good information about price and volume got lost in the storm of SPF data. It's all there in the original article online and worth reading if you're interested. And I'd encourage your patients to read it as well, because it is pitched and targeted at the general public audience. Secondly, the sunscreens on the market are very good and do decrease the amount of damage that humans get from the sun's ultraviolet rays. Hats, clothing, shade, avoidance of high UV times also work. And so we shouldn't forget those things. It's a combination of all those things what we should be telling our patients, not just one thing about the sunscreen. It's good to talk to our patients about the grey of the world. Things aren't black and white. And that some sun protection is better than none. It's that shade of grey of protection rather than expecting a complete shield that no sun's going to hit your skin. That just doesn't happen. And the final thing we need to really understand is that SPF testing is not an exact science, as we might have thought that it was. People are looking for better ways of testing, but they just don't exist yet. So for the time being, our world will not be black and white. So that's all for today. I hope you found this episode helpful and perhaps even picked up something practical to use in your clinical work. A big shout out to HealthCert for all their help with production and distribution of this episode. They do a lot of good things in skin cancer education, including helping to get this podcast to you. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time on Life by 1,000 Cuts.